Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again on your computer screen. Today I'm doing a little bit of a reaction video. I don't like to do these all the time, but I saw a video today where Jerome built 3 gold sarcophagus promos as cards that will irrevocably change the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played. You're just going to have to bear with me. I know I look like a ghoul right now. I just got out of the shower. I've got a huge light source right here. That's the outside. And one up here, so until I get a circle light, I'm going to look like some kind of man torn between dimensions. Speaking of, these 3 cards include one called Dimension Shifter. I've only seen the art for these. I haven't seen the text because it's just a little bit too small for my weak boomer eyes to decipher. When I think of cards that have irrevocably changed the face of Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever, I think of Cyber Dragon, Effect Veiler, Pot of Duality is a good one, probably Elemental Hero Stratos. And if we're doing a recent example, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. When these were released, they changed the way the game is played. They changed how decks are built, how you answer your opponent's threat, and most importantly, they changed design rules from Konami's perspective, right? When Cyber Dragon was released, it changed the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played forever by ushering it radically towards this special summoning variant of the game we all grew up loving, which was drastically different than the previous format, which was GOATS. When Effect Veiler was released, suddenly there were extremely powerful hand traps, answers to your opponent's threats that you couldn't interact with because they didn't exist on the board. There was no way to preempt them. And that trend, of course, has continued today. Hand traps have been some of the most influential designs in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. Pot of Duality ushered in this unbelievable amount of consistency for any deck, like extremely generic consistency tools that let you access any card in your deck at any given time, means that you have to adjust the ban list in a way that you can expect decks to find whatever, whenever, and Konami has, of course, done that. Elemental Hero Stratos, I think was maybe the first card that searched an entire archetype, and now there are tons of them. Almost every new archetype released has a card that is a Stratos. It's a very Yu-Gi-Oh! Phenomenon, and has influenced both design and deck building since its inception. And finally, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring has pushed Konami to make modern decks they want to be playable more redundant. They need to be able to beat an Ash Blossom, and as much as I hate to say it, as a longtime stan of Konami doesn't know what they're doing with card design, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring has stemmed the flow of uninteractive, extremely fragile FTK decks that are inevitable in a non-rotating format. So these cards are supposed to exist in the same context as those. Cards that will change Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever. Our first one is called Nibiru, the Primal Being. Ain't no Planet X, because ain't no Glowbirth, because ain't no Nibiru, dude. We've got a rock effect monster with about 1,000,000 stars and 3,000 attack, 600 defense. I love that meteors are just monsters now. We're so far past monster actually meaning anything. During the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summoned 5 or more monsters this turn, quick effect, you contribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, not just your own, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand, then special summon a Primal Being token to your opponent's side of the field, which is the original attack and defense of the tributed monsters. Wow. And that's it. Just immediately, I can tell that this is going to be a format-defining card. I hate to make claims this extreme so early, especially on the first read of a card, but geez Louise. I was talking about this a little bit yesterday in Farfa's Twitch chat. Farfa, please read my messages. But even decks that are fair, even decks that, like, do things that aren't super broken are special summoning, like 5 to 7 times a turn. You look at decks like Sky Striker and you say, well, it's not like making an unbreakable board. It's not special summoning 20 times in a turn. Yeah, but it is going like special Ray off of Area Zero's effect, special Kana potentially, special Hayate, special Kagari, special Shizuku, and suddenly Nibiru's on. And of course, it destroys your opponent's monster, gives them a token that does absolutely nothing but turns off their monsters. Wow, yeah, that's incredible. I am so happy to see this card. Our second one is Dark Ruler No More. It says, negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. This is another weird one. Clearly meant to break boards, and when you hear a top Konami official like Jerome saying stuff like these are meant to change the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played, this is a concession by them to the fact that any non-rotating format, you know me, big advocate of rotating formats, any non-rotating format will eventually hit a vanishing point where any deck, regardless of the utility of its individual monsters, will be able to use the tutorable wish board that is the extra deck to assemble a board of 3 to 4 negates, the minimum necessary to prevent your opponent from playing entirely. I mean, anything, as someone who deck builds rogue decks, every single rogue deck is constantly at war with its own linear play to make a board that isn't just like Saruya, Dawn Dragster, LP, Gar Dragon shenanigans. So it's nice to see that they've recognized the problem. The question then is this the correct way to solve it? And I think this is close. This is a good card, but at the same time, combo decks can play this. Like, think about it this way. I'm playing Pendulum. I set up a board. My opponent, who is also on Pendulum, draws their opener. It's insane, but of course they can't play through Spheres plus Void Ogre Dragon plus whatever flavor of Gar Dragon shenanigan they've decided to end on, plus Endymion. So they slam down a Dark Ruler No More, and then they combo off. Then their unbeatable combo makes it onto the board. They attack their opponent's monsters. They don't kill them because damage is halved. Their opponent draws, and of course then cannot beat the setup. I don't dislike it, but it really does feel like it just changes the winner of the duel by virtue of drawing it. It's a great card, but it's extremely sacky. Third is Dimension Shifter. Dimension Shifter says, if you have no cards in the graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. That's funny. So, they release 3 cards and say these 3 cards will be the ones that save Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 hand traps and a card that's effectively just a giant AoE called by the grave. Alright, well, at least they know the direction their product is taking. Dimension Shifter is interesting. I like this effect a lot. It's been printed a couple of times, most recently, I think, in DD Ground. This one's interesting because it's reciprocal, right? Like, there are certain decks that want their monsters to end up in the banished zone, and this guarantees that it happens. Importantly, it has to be used before any other hand trap, so it's going to be hard to, like, bait something with Ash and then be like, okay, Dimension Shifter. It also conflicts with hand traps because some specifically have to be sent to the graveyard, and of course, that can't happen if this effect is active. But it's also an extremely powerful card. You think about something like the worst case scenario being Thunder Dragon, where opponents are like, whoa, 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 you don't want to let your opponent banish their cards. They're going to pop off ad infinitum with things like Thunder Dragon Dark, Thunder Dragon Hawk. But I don't know how true that is. Thunder Dragon has morphed into this very odd Gar Dragon-focused combo deck, which relies on cards in the graveyard in order to facilitate the summoning conditions of things like the Chaos Dragons, things like Chaos Dragon Levianeer, and this prevents that from happening. Dimension Shifter seems like an extremely powerful hand trap that will see a ton of play. We've seen DD Crow kind of sneaking into lists, and for all intents and purposes, this strikes me as one that is a lot better, despite the fact that its utility is almost completely destroyed after the first turn. So that's that. These are 3 very interesting cards. I'm kind of having trouble putting into words just how impactful I think they are going to be, but they're going to be important, certainly. Every single one of these is going to see a significant amount of play, and some of them may be slightly more oppressive than others. At their best, I think they're going to facilitate a style of gameplay that encourages focused game plans that don't end on a quadrillion negates, and at their worst, I worry that they're just going to enable extremely powerful negate board building decks to do so with hand trap backup. We'll see.